Good morning again, folks. Again, I apologize for my less than stellar appearance. Welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I'm your host, Tiffany Daniels. We're going back to that horrible world known as the JRC, but before we do, the usual disclaimers. In the description box, you're going to find a link to the article that the Judge Rotenberg Educational Center doesn't want you to read. It's written by NeuroClastic, a small non-for-profit started by Autistics for Autistics, wherein they interviewed and surveyed over 988 professionals in regards to the JRC's so-called behavior modification program. Matter of fact, the JRC doesn't want you to read this article so much. They've threatened NeuroClastic with a defamation lawsuit if they did not remove it from the website. Well, folks, as you know, NeuroClastic has refused, so you know the drill. Please read the article and share it on all your social media. Also included in there is NeuroClastic's public statement in regards to the defamation lawsuit, as well as a link to their GoFundMe. We are crowdfunding in case the JRC actually sees through with their threat. Also included in there, the Ozarks' first article in regards to Agape boarding school, now known as Stone for Help boarding school situation. A so-called Christian-themed boarding school based out of Stockton, Missouri that takes in so-called troubled male teens that has pending over 21 civil lawsuits, claims, and allegations leveled against it, all which have been substantiated by the Missouri Department of Social Services, and they include the following: sodomy, rape, sexual assault, child abuse, psychological and emotional abuse, child trafficking, starvation, and that's just the start. You have one former staff member arrested by the FBI, another a doctor still on the premises with full access to the boys up on multiple, again, substantiated claims of sodomy, rape, and sexual assault the boys there. You have an attorney general too busy chasing after drag queens and badly photoshopping them, and trying and failing to defund public libraries to actually do his damn job. And you got a governor off his nuts, so please send help. Read that article, share it on all your social media. You got the other pertinent links to the Stop the Shots campaign as well, including Autistic, who has massive archive on the subject. Jennifer Masemba's behavioral sheet of shockable offenses. A clip out of the 7-hour ordeal undergone by Andre McCollins back in 2002. The templates and the ever-present, very self-explanatory change.org should the Judge Rotenberg Center down petition. When we discuss the JRC, you're going to hear vivid descriptions of and catch clips of surveillance footage of people with disabilities being tortured and abused. If you do got young children present, folks, please go ahead and use those headphones, alright? Alright, but trigger warning, this channel is marked not for kids for a reason. We use profanity on occasion and speak on dark subjects. If your child is 16 and younger and they are watching this, very obviously parental supervision is very much advised, alright? Alright, so where we left off, right? Number 3, statutory and regulatory protections specifically addressing the misuse of Aversives. Even their own so-called guidelines, I might add, right? What does the JRC say in every freaking PR release? It's for those who are the most severe, a danger to themselves and others. And oh, my favorite, straight out of Autism Mommy TM's playbook, my absolute favorite. These kids are severe, and we are the only ones with, by means of torture, that can help them. Which we all know, and data has since long ago backed us up, that that's a big, bad lie. But let's start reading, shall we? Even with recently renewed interest in the subject of Aversives and their appropriate place in education and treatment, the law regarding their use is still far from consistent. I'm going to backtrack a little bit. Shane Neurmeyer, that's his name, but please forgive me for this. But I do want to make something clear. There is a very real debate that is taking place. But I will use use this terminology for a reason, but unfortunately, the world out there is not aware of it. They are completely oblivious that things like aversives are still being used, and that there's even a debate as to their place, if they have any place at all, inside medical treatment. And that's because, like I stated earlier in my last video, the media is not talking about it. The media is too busy propping up that liar AH to actually report on things such as the fact that aversives are still a part of many treatment programs when it comes to kids with disabilities. It's almost a distraction tactic. You know what I mean? Don't look at the man behind the curtain. I'm gonna say it. Moving on before I get on a rant. At this point, there are no federal statutes or regulations specifically addressing this issue, though there are some that may be applicable in the rare cases in the areas of disability discrimination and special education law. Also true. By the way, folks, to even get those obscure ones to become a part of special education law, or to even argue on the side of the Disability Bill of Rights, you would think that would be cut and dry. But my God, I've had less pain having my tooth extracted than it is to try to get them to actually apply the protections that we are supposed to be allotted because of those laws. I'm not kidding. I'm not sensationalizing it. It is literally. Matter of fact, places like the JRC and like Agape will use those laws as a way to defend their barbarity. I'm not kidding. We've seen it in the JRC documents, and we all know that is the grandpappy model for the troubled teen industry. Granted, this is an opinion, but I've seen enough from both to see the footprints of the JRC all over the troubled teen industry. When I tell you the institutions, and now the schools, who might as well be the institutions, if you get a real hard look at how they operate and start digging into the troubled teen industry, where do you think they get their model from? Look into it. But that's besides the point. The fact of the matter is, for the so-called protections that we were given because the politicians want us to shut up, it is still like pulling teeth to actually get these people to apply those laws. For the most part, however, it is addressed by a wide variety of state laws and regulations. Now, speaking to state laws, because bread and butter here, it's still pulling teeth, folks. Again, the creation of my particular mask that I have labeled the doll was created for a reason. I live in an extremely conservative, backwards, Bible Belt state. Okay? All the money, the influence, and the power are coming from extremely conservative, extremely evangelical families. Point blank, period. The power behind the throne, as it were. If you want to actually even attempt to become a politician in this state, in your GOP, if you do not get the support of the leading evangelical conservative families, you might as well kiss your campaign goodbye. Alright? Because we don't have any real federal protections against crap like the JRC. So most of us have to wheel and deal with our state politicians. In conservative states like mine, they literally view us disabled folk as people who lack the faith, who just don't believe enough when we pray, and that's why we have disabilities and God won't cure us. I wish to God I was kidding, but I'm not. So, it's best. This is when I told you it's backroom deals politics. This is all the more true when that is the type of politician you're having to deal with. It is when they, so to speak, let their hair down, stop being on, when they've got at least one drink in them, that you can start usually talking and reasoning with these folks. There are some disabled protections out here. They're not as good as I would want them to be. Unfortunately, they do not translate to the troubled teen industry. We do have a large amount of us who are working desperately on that. But the few protections we do have were put there in the early 2000s, and it was due to, again, a handful of us. It was self-advocates and parent groups putting on the pressure. I like to give the biggest shout out to the Southwest PAC. Southwest PAC is a group of individuals. It is self-advocates, it's parents, it's educators that worked diligently to get those few protections that we have in my state put into place. These are the individuals who acted as my mentors to show me how to do what it is that I do now. I hate to say it, but folks, for the love of God, look at Autism Speaks. The parents' groups are the largest groups. They are the ones with the funding. Okay? I got lucky that the Southwest PAC was built with parents who worked in the healthcare field. Individuals who worked terminally dealing with the martyr complex that so many neurodivergent parents of neurodivergence do. Extremely lucky. Extremely lucky. You have no idea. None. But it's worth to put these protections in on a state basis because we know they won't do it on a federal. They will one day because we won't allow for anything else. But I'm also realistic. Remember, I'm a nihilist. I see reality for what it is, not what I want it to be. But that's enough nihilism to also doubt what it's going to take to get it changed. And to have just enough, just enough bit of hope to fight my way through until we get it done. But anyways, let's continue on battling. Love. At the end of 2009, 27 states had any kind of binding laws or regulations that limited the use of restraint, seclusion in public schools. Of the others, 8 had non-binding policy guidelines on the subject. A number of states also have licensing regulations on private, special, and alternative educational programs. Such laws and regulations differ across a number of axes, including not limited to what law actually exists, what types of programs and settings it covers, and agencies established the relevant regulations. how it defines certain terms, and of course what it allows, prohibits, and requires. So one of Missouri's main claims to fame, in spite of being a GOP hillbilly nightmare, is circa 2008 we commenced the Blue Ribbon Panel, which I was a part of. Well, I testified at the Blue Ribbon Panel, to be specific. That Blue Ribbon Panel was established to determine a need for a specific department that oversees the programs that take care of autistic kids. The treatment programs, the different places such as ARC, Burl, Nova, oversees all of this, right? It created the Department of Autism Services later that year. This is a particular department out of my state that acts as oversight for specifically, folks, the autistic kids within the state of Missouri. This commission's job, because these checks and balances did not exist before then, was to act as a way to regulate throughout the state and propose laws, protections, and lists of guidelines that agencies that served autistic kids had to follow. The protections that across the board the state has to follow. I was a part of that commission. I was handpicked by Governor Jay Nixon, and I served an 8-year term in that position to help create these things. And yes, folks, it's an ongoing commission. We're still working on it. It's just, yeah. I work now as more as a consultant as opposed to being a direct member of it, because I'd like to also support and help up those who come after me. I'm getting old. That's the sort of things that he's talking about right here. Missouri is actually extremely rare, folks. A lot of the 27 states that he's referring to here doesn't have such an animal. It's haphazard. It's not just different guidelines for each program. It's different guidelines for each state, different guidelines for each section of the state, different guidelines for each town of each state. It is a chaotic mess that is able to be twisted by anyone with enough money, dealing with politicians with enough greed. Okay? It's a mess. This is why advocates keep pushing for federal protections and maybe even creation of a federal agency that would actually start overseeing this. And no, I'm not talking about the Department of Special Education. Okay? This is wider. It's not just about education, although it's the massive part of it, and I'm rambling again. Let's close out before I lose my train of thought. And it's morning, folks. It's going to happen. What he's talking about here is you got about a handful of states that have any kind of laws, rules, or regulations, or protections in regards to programs, particularly residential programs like the JRC. Majority of them are loose. They don't have a commission like ours that creates a uniform guidelines and uniform laws across the board. Which means when trying to deal with things such as aversives that has caused untold harm against disabled kids, it is hard to get that brought before a court. It's even harder to get the laws applied correctly to act in the protection of the kids. When I say that I've got my work cut out for me, and whether this shilling for AH ever goes away or not, I'm still going to be busy. This is what I'm talking about. This is why I say things such as I'll sleep when I'm dead. For those of you who are in the US, and yes, even international, because I've heard some things about the UK and in particular France that are kind of terrifying. You need to know how discombobbled all of this actually is. There's a reason why places like the JRC continue to get away with this year after year after year, decade after decade after decade. This is why we can no longer allow the public to hut its head in the sand like an ostrich simply because disability isn't sexy. Because eventually, especially those who are emerging now with long COVID, guess what? This affects you. We're going to close on that. We don't get very many views on this channel. The few that we do get do tend to get removed from time to time. So please don't forget to hit the like button, hit subscribe, and don't forget to hit the comments. I do appreciate your time. And as always, folks, we here at Spilling Tea hope you have a good one. Bye-bye, everyone.